Is the United States ready for the surge of people that's going to come across the border starting later this week?
We're doing all we can. The answer is it remains to be seen. It's going to be chaotic for a while.
We believe we have a robust process to deal with what is going to occur after Title 42 lifts. Again, we're using the tools that are available to us because Congress refuses to do their job as it relates to the border.
And we still don't know what those tools are or what they're doing. That was President Biden and the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, on the expected migrant surge once Title 42 expires in less than 24 hours from now. The Defense Department announcing about 550 active duty troops have started arriving at the border. This is the president of Guatemala is warning that 80,000 migrants are now making their way to the U.S.-Mexico border. Joining me right now is Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall. AG, good to see you. Thanks very much for being here. You're just back. You just returned from a trip to the border last week. What did you see?
No, it was staggering. And what we heard was the impending tsunami of migrants who were going to attempt to cross the border at the ports of crossing. But also, let's recognize that those individuals are not connected to Mexico directly. And we know that there are going to be significant illegal crossings across the border for Mexican nationals as well.
When the administration says we're using all the tools that we have, what do you think they're referring to? Because I know that they've reversed all of the Trump policies that were working at the border. Now we're at 40-year highs in terms of border numbers versus 20-year lows under Trump. So what specifically do you think they're referring to when they say we're using all the tools, we're doing what we can do, and it's Congress's fault?
Yeah, I think I wish we knew. You know, it's clear that, the president, through his comments yesterday, can't even acknowledge that this administration is prepared to deal with the volume of numbers coming across. We ought to be thankful for Governor Abbott's leadership. We know that Texas has taken on responsibilities that shouldn't be theirs to be able to secure the border.
Yeah.
The reality is the Remain in Mexico policy worked. It kept people on the outside of this country waiting for their asylum hearings. And the reality is right now that our Border Patrol agents are simply going to be processing paper, giving individuals access to our country for years at a time before they're ever adjudicated on their asylum claims. And the reality is we don't know where they're going. We don't know whether or not they're going to work, and they're going to be a stress on our social service systems across our country.
Well, we know that top border officials already are authorizing mass migrant releases for border facilities over capacity issues. That's across all Border Patrol sectors. One Fox News border source said, quote, the dam is about to break. So, AG Marshall, what's the situation in Alabama? Are you seeing an impact there? And as a sitting attorney general in the state of Alabama, what can you do about this?
Yeah, I think we clearly are seeing the impact in Alabama. Number one, Maria, we talked before about the rise of fentanyl in our country, and we're seeing the loss of life that I believe is directly attributable to the border policies of this administration. We're also seeing criminal activity. Heard stories of individuals charged with sexual crimes involving children that have had 3 or 4 illegal border crossings, still able to come into this country and be able to return quickly after their return to Mexico. The reality is that we need to continue to work with our local law enforcement to identify those offenders that are there. But the reality is this border is creating a crisis across our country, and yet we have an administration who's not yet ready to deal with it.
And AG, I know that you're testifying in front of the House Oversight Committee today on ESG practices. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we're glad, number one, that Chairman Comer and the Oversight Committee is taking a look at ESG. The reality is this is having a significant impact on our markets. It is allowing global elites to be able to dictate energy policy across our country and to be able to set preferred societal values that aren't a part of the democratic processes. Appreciate the opportunity to be able to share what Republican attorneys general are doing about it, because we need to be aggressive here and to make sure that we not only educate the public about it, but are protecting our consumers.
For sure. I mean, many investors don't even realize that their votes are being directed by someone who may disagree completely about environmental issues with regard to the ESG movement and this administration's all-of-government approach to the climate change agenda. Adam, jump in.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Attorney General, can you help us understand? We all talk about ESG. But it's this nebulous thing where you sort of feel like, you got to do the right thing. But what is it specifically that the state of Alabama can do to push back against ESG? Because that tends to happen more at a federal level with the SEC in Congress, et cetera. What can Alabama do?
Well, specifically, we can remind the market itself what fiduciary duty means. We have 152 million Americans that are investing their hard-earned dollars into retirement funds, and yet we have an administration that wants to adopt a rule that allows for investment managers who have their own very specific agenda to be able to use subjective criteria that's nothing relating to the return on investment for those individuals in investing those dollars. And so we have an opportunity, not only through litigation, but also through the power given to attorneys general to be able to protect our consumers, to be able to not only highlight that agenda, but to make sure that Congress has the opportunity to be able to act.
And these wind farms are also creating havoc. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. We've got an important interview coming up tomorrow morning to talk about what the wind farms are reportedly doing to our whales. Sharice, jump in here.
Yeah, I actually have a question because I work a lot with college students and college campuses, and a big part of what we're seeing now is actually that ESG is being taught in business schools and the practices are being encouraged. What can we do kind of at the university level to show students that there's a lot more to business than just ESG and DEI and all of these various initiatives that want them to focus more on what divides this country and these various priorities and focus instead more on maybe some of the freedoms and constitutional foundational principles of the country?
Amen.
Yeah, we simply need to ask the question, what's the purpose in a corporation weighing in on controversial social issues of the time? Why is it they should take positions on abortion, about gender identity? What we ought to be looking at are the fundamentals of the market. We ought to be able to be talking about how it is that companies ought to be valued and what is the true purpose. I mean, examining this dichotomy between stakeholder capitalism versus shareholder capitalism and making sure that the focus of business is on the goods and services they provide and the return on investment. All
right, we will leave it there. AG will be watching your testimony today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Steve Marshall, This Morning.